the recording is started. Hello, welcome to Fall 2023. I hope your quarter teaches you better than, or treats you better than it has been treating me. And with that, let's jump into this big ol' meeting. So, welcome to Fall 2023, like I said. Um, so for anyone new, you might be sitting here going, who is SCAC? What is SCAD Concept Art Club? And I am happy to say, uh, oh, okay. We pretty much exist because we bridge the gap between four concept majors at SCAD. That includes illustration, CEQA, ITGM or games, and the animation department because there are actually four different tracks of concept art at SCAD, and there's not really much interplay between them, so we try and bridge those gaps that SCAD may not cover for us and kind of work on skills that SCAD may not necessarily bring up or talk about in classes. We also hope to help students create more open lines of communication in our pretty much server here. Um, and so, jumping into it, who are we? These are our officers. We are running with 6 officers this quarter. I am Tessa Kissick, the president of SCAC. If you see me around, I am indefinitely online because I'm nuts. Um, do you guys, do the other officers want to say hello, or do you want me to just, alright.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm one of the vice, or I'm the vice president here. Yeah, you can mainly find me at Heymans as well, or as Monty this quarter.
Is Kai here? I don't think Kai is here. Kai is our secretary. He is currently an animation student dying in Capstone. Uh, Ali, you are next, if you would like to be free.
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm the treasurer, and I'm in 3D animation. That's my major. So yeah, that's me.
Next is our ICC liaison, Ellen.
Yes. Hi, guys. I'm Ellen. I am your ICC liaison, and I'm pretty much living at Heyman's this quarter, so feel free to hit me up.
Mood. I wish I lived at Hammond's. Next is our social media manager, Martin. If you'd like to say hello.
Hey, my name is Martin, and I am the only officer that online, and also I'm in sequential art. So yeah, nice to see you guys.
And that is our entire leadership team, minus Kai, since Kai's busy at a animation thing. Um, oh, hey, I skipped my notes. All right, so again, we're here to bridge the gap between the four majors. We pretty much developed this to help with skills. We run anything from demos, talks. We do have actually a scheduled guest visit. We are excited to talk about that. Interviews and other activities, depending on our schedules. Um, and we hope you guys enjoy our kind of community and what we do in this club. So meetings, places, times, oh my. We get a lot of questions about this, so I kind of wanted to give a rundown of the types of meetings we run and some more details about that. So this is our current schedule for the quarter. We try and put out a poster like this just to tell people like what's happening throughout the quarter at the beginning of the quarter. We always run our meetings 6 to 7 p.m., usually on Discord. We always announce it with a at everyone ping in our announcements channel, so don't mute it, please. And for anyone, or for any time we have our in-person contests, generally they're contests, we will also announce that time, and it's 6 to 8 p.m. instead, just to give people more time to concept, because an hour is a little bit too short. Um, this year, because of some funkiness with room reservations, we will actually be back in Hayman's Hall. We will be in Hayman's Hall 111, and again, we will announce that when that happens. So some examples of meetings we've had, we run workshops, we run demos, we've also had guest speakers like Becca Halstead, Tim Kaminsky, Nala, or Jay, who was in the chat earlier, and we've brought in some indie teams, like we had the director and producer of Submersed come and talk about teamwork a few quarters ago. If you ever miss a meeting, We do have a running archive of our meetings, and that includes meeting notes, like in an outline form. We upload our videos unless we have a technical issue, which we have not had for a while, knock on wood. And then in both those things, we link the doc after the meeting with, hey, here's this meeting. If you want to refer back to it, here's the video links and all that. I have also linked our entire archive in both my doc, my Google Doc, and this presentation for anyone interested after the meeting. Next question is, what are contests? So these are our main, oh boy, oh boy, my mouse likes freaking out. Okay. So our contests are in-person get-togethers. Again, we're in Hammond's Hall this quarter. Generally, we run two of them, so we have one at midterms and then week 9, because we can't schedule on week 10, because hey, you get to go home and not die in school. Um, for contests, we have like a range of contests we do. Sometimes we do redesigns, sometimes we do just prompt ones. Most of these are actually an example of what we did last quarter, where we had kind of a world building prompt we sent out, and then everyone was able to kind of add their own pieces to the world via the prompt. Next is, hey, congrats! First step, you're in the Discord. If you have any questions about the Discord, feel free to ask. This was actually originally mostly, we changed from an on-ground club to a Discord club mostly because COVID happened. So we kind of were trying to balance how do we keep our club running and keeping things going throughout that time. And ever since then, we've kind of just stayed on Discord because of the ability to archive our meetings for future, SCAC residents. Um, yeah. And if you have any questions, just hit us up in critique, general chat, chat with us and we will chat back. Oh boy, please stop freaking out. Our other social medias include our Instagram. It's at SCAD Concept Art Club. Same logo. We will also post our meeting announcements on our Instagram, and we do have a few more plans for the Insta, but we're still kind of working out those kinks. If you ever lose the Discord invite, it is also on the Instagram in the little thing. Also, we're still kind of dealing with some weirdness, so we may or may not be at Fall Fest. So hey, if you go to Fall Fest from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Hive, say hi if we're there. If not, go definitely check out all the other clubs. There's a bunch of other illustration clubs and religious clubs and cultural clubs, so like definitely like go check it out. It's such a cool event. Although it might be a little bit toasty, but that depends on weather. Um, so moving on, you might be sitting here going, well, gee, alright, that's club, but what is concept art? And this is a really big question that spans a lot of things, because concept art can take a lot of different forms. Uh, oh boy, please. Okay. So concept art generally is just at its base, like components, it's ideation. You are visually problem solving generally a prompt that you're given, and often we communicate those ideas by drawing and painting, although there are other options like 3D and stuff. Um, so there you go, visually problem solve. Drawing and painting are the mediums we often use to express it. Um, oh god, I'm sorry, my thing's freaking out. I don't know why it's, oh boy. Okay, stop. Um, yeah, so a lot of the time we are given a prompt, so like design a cracker box for a ocean theme thing that is mass produced by a company. And that's just kind of an example of what you may get. It could be anything from props, environments, characters, uh, just the whole range of things depending on kind of what you're looking at. Uh, so our main thing is we generally inhabit an early stage of product or uh, visualization in a project, and we have to work within the world constraints we're given. So that includes established lore, needs of the world, what is the tone of the project, and what is the target audience? Because your target audience, like you're not going to show children the same thing you're going to show adults because their interests are just very different and the way their minds work are very different. Uh, and also, a lot of it depends on what medium it's going to take place in. So if it's a game, the pipeline and the general needs of it are very different from what animation is going to look for. So the basic kind of breakdown of it is you want to make sure you have strong fundamental art fundamentals, because art fundamentals are the vehicle in which our ideas and everything take place. So in order to properly convey them, we need to make sure we have strong fundamental understandings in order to kind of visually storytell that. After that is the intention. Uh, so like, what is the design for? What does it solve? And where is it going to end up? And then after that, it comes to feel and story, and that's kind of narrowing down that general intention into kind of clearer ideas of where you want the stuff to go. There is an archive of a deeper dive into this pyramid, way back in God knows when. I can link it in this. So next is the different flavors of concept art. Kind of. So the main reason why I say kind of is because concept art, you have to be able to visually tell your story and design it effectively, but the way that takes shape depends on kind of what level of studio you're working at, their goals, how they function, and their pipeline, which can change very drastically between studios. So just because one studio says, this job title is this, another studio could have the same job title and ask for slightly different things. Um, so looking a little bit into it, um, there's all kinds of different kind of flavor texts that can change things. So it depends on the level of your studio. Is it AAA, AA, indie? Are you freelancing or are you being outsourced to a studio? What is the intended, output of the studio you're working for? Because again, animation asks for different things than games, and then television is a whole nother thing that asks for different things and different looks of things. Um, for example, if you're working on a really stylized animation, it's not going to look the same and maybe work the same as a realistic animation. And then games themselves are an entirely different beast because they're using, different engines, there's a different process of working through them, and various stuff like that. A lot of it also depends on what part of the pipeline you're coming into. So there's previs, pre-production, production, post-production, and that can change depending on games and animation again. Their pipelines differ, but generally it follows that general flow. So, for example, if you're coming in as an early ideating concept artist, you could be thrown into something called a shotgun approach. And that is where they hire just a bunch of artists, give them all the same prompts, they all ideate, and then they send those ideations to the studio will pull them all up and they'll be like, I like that cape, that face, that tail, those pants, and then kind of hone in that vision, send that prompt out again, and then hone that in further and further until they get a design they like. So and that's an example of early ideation process. And that changes depending on if it's pre-production or production. So for example, something else you could do is keyframes or mood paintings along with environments, assets, and props, which can all be a little bit further into that pipeline of more pre-production or production. And those aren't necessarily seen. A lot of the times it's just to figure out the mood, the tone, the feel, some more concrete things before they move on in the process so they can clearly say, oh, hey, look, we have this painting, go for this. So that way it's not as nebulous. A lot of the times we inhabit something called the blue sky phase, and the blue sky phase is pretty much just an early thing of just ideating, ideating, ideating. Um, and that's where we normally are, but again, we can inhabit a lot more parts of the pipeline. Um, Also, before we take a peek into the industry, it's also important to be able to understand what your art director is asking for. and being able to kind of match what they're asking for. And that can take on a little bit different feeling depending on also how the studio functions. So, let's take a peek into the industry. So first off, this is a passion project, and you might ask yourself, gee, why is a passion project here? Passion projects are actually a really, really great way to develop a pitch and show you can work in, kind of a studio setting and showing you can ideate. The only caveat this comes with is you have to be your own art director. And that can be a little bit hard because, I mean, as everyone knows, we are our own worst critic, but you also have to make informed design choices that further your narrative, which can also be pretty hard since you're working for yourself by yourself. So for example of that, this is Irie Pan. She is a alum of Pasadena Art College, the big one. And in her Ambrosia project, which is what this is from, she really dives into how would magic work if it was entirely powered by magical honey. So this is one of her characters that uses honey-based attacks, and she's a honey mage princess. Um, Another example is kind of uh, figuring out how cultures can be pulled into things. So even though we are concepting things that may not and be like straight pulled from the world or based on real world aspects, it's still important to do the legwork of research because it creates something very convincing based on that research. And you don't have to follow it 100%, but it's also important to be faithful to the research you're doing because uh, you don't want to be Disney. Because it just adds this extra level of realism into your work that you may have not intentionally or may have not originally thought of. So, for example, Ambrosia is based actually on Nepalese honey hunters and their collection of mad honey, I believe it's called. Um, so she kind of brings in aspects of that into her work as well as more traditional religious iconography because they worship the kind of creatures that make the honey in this world, I believe. Um, so moving on to that, you can kind of see how everything is built around kind of this livelihood via the honey. So they have like these candles that are powered by honey, and they have these kind of oh Lord, all these kind of things that tie back into the culture. Oh gosh, why is it skipping? Stop. Okay, I'm going to lock my mouse wheel, and that doesn't help. All right. Going back to it. So by being able to kind of look at the design choices made in our real world examples, you can pull from those and make it a more realistic and uh, kind of back up your design choices with that stuff. Uh, so, for example, she researched actual prayer bells. Uh, I forget which religion it is, but she pulls kind of iconographies from that and the idea and uses of it into her world to kind of further add in that extra punch to what she's developing. A different example of this is in this is actually an example of shotgun explorations. So this is Senna from League of Legends. For the longest time, she was written out in lore, but they didn't have anything that was like, oh yeah, visually Senna, here you go, ready, push it out. So they actually took a shotgun approach to concepting Senna. So this is Justin Albers and his kind of renditions of it. And you can see he took it in all different directions. What if her gun was, you know, a two-part relic gun like Lucian uses? Or what if it's a giant, massive kind of rail gun? Or what if she can just spawn spiritual arms and shoot six guns? And that's kind of an important thing in our process is you don't want to just settle into one idea. You want to explore all the ideas and then hone in. Because if you hone in too soon, you might get a little bit too um I don't know. It's a I don't want to say bad because, it's just the deeper you dive generally, the more you can get out of it, if that makes sense. Um, so for example, these are other kind of looks into Senna, and I believe this left one is Evelyn, or maybe a different look into Senna. So as you can see, they're working exhaustively in order to kind of figure out how she looks, how she functions. Like, you have the other ideations of this gun, and then they pushed it further and they said, we kind of like this chunky gun, but let's see what it looks like if we do these other design shapes. And then you can kind of see this is an entirely different kind of look into maybe how Senna could have gone. And so by kind of exhaustively exploring all these other avenues, you kind of push away from the more basic, simpler ideas and you make it more unique. Senna is from League of Legends. Yeah. She's pretty old though. It's been like 1 or 2 years, I think. Um, but you can also see how they're exploring kind of different ways the shapes and stuff can go together. Uh, so moving on, you can also be concepting props. Uh, so as you see, it's also important to explore different types of textures because different types of textures can make things read very differently. So by making sure you kind of knock out all the other avenues and hone in on that one vision becomes more clear. And that's important because a lot of the time concept art is passed on to people further down the pipeline. So by answering all these various different questions here, the pipeline can continue on seamlessly because they know what the intention and how everything works in space. Uh, so this is kind of an example of how lighting and textures may be explored, and it makes sure that everything is honed in on, so no other people down the line have to go back and be like, no, 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 we need to go back and figure this out first. So, moving on, uh, this is an example of kind of like how a mood painting could work. Uh, this is Trudy Castle for anyone who doesn't know. So art directors are the people you answer to, and a lot of the time they have the vision and they can hone in and tell people, no, that doesn't look quite right. Try this color, that mood doesn't work, or that shape language doesn't work, to ensure that everything moving towards the end product works together in a way that they want it read as. Because if you go with this top left kind of view and look, and it's more of a sad, ominous, or desolate kind of area, this tone isn't going to work for the direction the project is going to work in. So by honing in and kind of popping out the ideas that don't work, you can create a clearer vision. And it helps everyone move a little bit quicker and more streamlined. So next, uh, again, all these jobs can look a little bit different. And everything asks for something kind of a little bit different because not every studio is built the same and not every studio kind of has the same values. And that changes everywhere and with everything. But it's important that everything in the process builds towards this bigger picture. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in production hell and nothing is going to get done. So moving on from that, uh, oh boy, what did it skip? Okay, so we're gonna look at some concept art OGs. These are people who kind of revolutionized concept art as a whole. The first big guy is Scott Robertson. He is a master of lighting. He knows his perspective and form. Uh, Congrats, he won. He can create complex designs really just crazily fast, and he actually ended up setting the precedent for speed. And as you can see, he really knows his fundamentals because he can pop out designs like crazy. And they're not just simple basic designs. They have all these nice curvilinear forms, and they're very in depth and really explore a lot of things. Um, He has also released a ton of books. So a really good one is How to Draw, Drawing and Sketching Environments. And he really just breaks down all these complex shapes and how to build them into really simple, digestible ways. He is also the I think he helped write it or compile it, but it's called The Skillful Huntsman. It is a concept art Bible because it shows how three different students approach the same kind of prompt and topic, but in very different ways. So it's kind of a nice look into also the very different ways people can concept and pretty much reach the same prompt in very different ways of doing it. Uh, and he has a few other books too. I'm not super familiar with them. Yes, question. Go ahead. No, I am a super senior. Oh, hey, Skillful Huntsman. So as you can see, they kind of show the different types of silhouetting. So you have the super block silhouettes, you have kind of the more line-based sketch silhouettes, and kind of a combination of the two. So it kind of works and shows through those different processes. Next is Fengzhu. Fengzhu is a crazy boy. He has a absolute crazy masterful understanding of lighting, form, color, and perspective. Again, art fundamentals. He actually furthered the kind of need for speed. So he actually completely revolutionized the concept art industry with his crazy speed, his shortcuts, and how consistent he was in delivering and how they all look. He pretty much revolutionized everything and changed how people looked at concept art. And it's honestly a pretty new industry compared to a lot of the others. We're only about 30 to 50 years old compared to the other tycoons, which are hundreds, if not older, years old. Um, he also founded Fengzhou School of Design. It was based in Singapore, although currently I heard it was demolished because the government wanted their land. So maybe we'll see Fengzhou School come back, but hey, they still have their YouTube FCD School. It's a great resource for a lot of kind of what he teaches in his school, and if you follow those, you could have a really solid portfolio if you continue with like the exercises and stuff he goes through. Um, so next, there's his YouTube and kind of some more of his work. FCD School for anyone interested. So now we're going to look at more big dogs, but in this case, we are looking at the singular person. We are going to look at studios. And studios, they have a bunch of different flavors. So generally the first is first party. These are owned by console developers, and console developers usually have a little bit more say in stuff. Like for example, in order to get on Xbox, Xbox was asking Final Fantasy 14 to have like administrative access to all their servers. So for example, that's something they may ask for. Next is third party. Studios partnered with a publisher. And studios can actually partner with a bunch of different publishers. Like I've noticed, Devolver, or it's an indie studio that's partnered with two different publishers, so they're not actually super tied to it. And then we have independent, so this is kind of indie. They're self-published and not necessarily owned by a larger company. Next is outsource. So this is actually a studio who will have larger studios kind of come in and be like, hey, we need key arts for this. Give us artists to do that, and they'll send artists to do that. In my Google Docs, I have a breakdown of AA, AAA, indie, as well as kind of the difference between in-house, freelance, and studios. Also, other flavor titles is AAA. These are the big companies with the big blockbuster style games. They have massive budgets for both marketing and development. They are massive tycoons in this industry. They also generally sell several million units when a game releases. These often have hundreds of people on their teams, and often they have multiples of those teams across different offices and sometimes countries. Stepping down a little bit, we have the middle child. They are AA. They are smaller budget. They can range anywhere between the indie range and the AAA range, so they kind of have a lot of variance with them. Uh, they are still developed by fairly large groups of people, sometimes with multiple offices, but not to the great gargantuan amount that AAA has. And then we have the small child indie. They are independent of a company. They can kind of combine with another company, maybe down the line, or partner with them, but generally they're self-funded, and their teams can be as small as one person or up to 10 people, and sometimes a few more. Uh, and a lot of the times they actually depend on crowdfunding and donations in order to kind of get through their production process and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, that's a lot of stuff. Sorry for all that info. Uh, so an important thing to realize is a lot of the times in a larger team, you only have to really wear what we call a hat. So it's like if you're on a large team, you're only gonna deal with like character design or color scripts, and that's your thing. Whereas something smaller like an indie project may have you start as a concept artist and you viz dev a prop to moving into other areas like color scripts and stuff like that. So the smaller the team generally, the more hats you have to wear and the more you have to kind of juggle your skills. So kind of moving on to specific examples. First, we're going to look at Apex. So this is an example of a lot of artists working in the same style. And that's because there's an art director who has a singular vision, and they have to make sure everything delivered is fitting within that vision and works together cohesively. So you don't have the Amazing World of Gumball, for example. So all these artists kind of have their own styles individually, but they bring in kind of this overarching style with their own style kind of in little areas. So as you can see, all these pictures work together, but if you look a little bit closer, like this one's more smoothly rendered, whereas this one might be a little bit more towards the artist style. So even though they all fit under the same singular vision, each artist still retains a little bit of their own autonomy because we all don't make the same marks the same way. Um, Another example of this is back to League of Legends. This is Star Guardian Soraka. League of Legends has a little bit of a different approach where they have a singular vision, but their kind of explorations of characters are wider and all over the place. So, this was like the original character concept art for Soraka before actually being ported into the in-game style. So, a lot of artists can have different styles and work in those different styles, and it can still kind of siphon into the one singular vision or style of a game. So this is a very different approach from like Apex, where everyone was designing with the same design intention, if that makes sense. Um, and then kind of again, for League of Legends, this is all the same character, concepted by different people. Although I think one of two of these are from the same guy, but they're different parts of kind of that concept production. But as you can see, they didn't, have anything holding them back. They just explored all these different avenues, and even though all the styles don't match the same, that can actually, be rectified later on. So that's another way to kind of concept things. Next, another example is Overwatch. Sad to hear what happened to it. For those who don't know, Arnold Sang is the artist who originally kind of created this style. He was originally locked to Overwatch and only allowed to design characters. Um, but they kind of later brought in people who would collaborate and kind of work again towards that singular vision. So all of these are by different people, but they all kind of look the same, if that makes sense, because they're trying to all fit everything in to fit with the characters and everything in the world. Um, oh gosh. No, why are you doing this? So again, big teams mean you have more collaboration. Please stop doing this, computer. Why are you like this? Okay. So big teams mean more collaboration but less freedom. Oh my gosh, stop flipping around. Okay. You're designing something for the big picture, and everything has to kind of fit into that big picture. So your artistic voice within that project is more managed. So moving on to kind of smaller studios, uh, so this is Gen Z who works for Supergiant, and she actually handles like all of the characters for the games. Uh, and so there's less kind of hands pulling at the design. So it's smaller team, less collaboration. She kind of has to art direct herself a lot more. Um, and that comes with kind of more responsibility in a sense, if that makes sense, because everything is kind of you have all these responsibilities that you may not necessarily have if it was a bigger studio. Another example of this is Heart Machine. So this is Isaac Ramos, who worked very closely with the art director Alex Preston, and Alex Preston was the person who had the artistic vision, but Isaac Ramos was able to talk to him and kind of work through that with him. Um, so with the smaller team, you still have close collaboration, but you also kind of have to art direct yourself a little bit more because you can't consistently be bothering the art director with like, hey, does this fit? Does that fit? I mean, of course, do that, but you kind of have to make your own decisions a little bit more. Um, Again, there's a lot more freedom, but you have to diversify and have all these other hats you wear in smaller teams. Um, oh gosh, it's freaking out. So obviously this is just a small snapshot into the industry. The industry is massive, and again, it spans games, TV, animation, and a lot more. And everything kind of changes with all these different flavorings that they have. And it spans a lot of the production and pre-production and even before that process. So there's really, for lack of a better term, the sky is the limit uh, in concept art. As long as it fits the bigger narrative that you're being asked for. Um, so a lot of the examples we have are super stylized examples, so I wanted just to kind of throw in other AAA examples that are not as stylized and a little bit more realistic. So I believe this is from The Last of Us. You know, this is kind of one of those mood shots, just to kind of like figure out how stuff should feel. This is another example of concept art. Again, it's just a different flavor. This is another one. This is more environment, and you can concept environments, you can concept props, you can concept props in environments. You know, honestly, it just depends on what you want to do. This is Halo Infinite. You know, very different from kind of the approach of The Last of Us one. Uh, they're very kind of similar in the sense that they're very realistic, but they also have very different texturing, very different mark making, you know, stuff like that. Some different character examples. So this is like more realism, there's less stylization, but, you know, still important. Uh, an example of an aircraft and like how a hangar might look or how people might, you know, exist in that hangar. And then just kind of some last things before we wrap up. Uh, Here are some other big name concept artists to check out. Um, this will be uploaded later, so there's that. I also added back in our massive helpful resources thing at the end because, uh, you know, if you guys want to go out and research on your own, by all means, don't, you know, just check everything out, learn stuff. And, oh boy. With that, do we have any questions? Thank you all for coming. Uh, I hope I hope that covered concept art and our club. Uh, so yeah, y'all are free to go. Hope to see you in another, you know, time, place, future. I forget there's a soundboard.
Hello there.
I guess since we don't have any more questions, I will stop the recording.